Welcome to the Quality of Mind podcast, where you can explore the pioneering and game-changing understanding that unlocks the secret sauce to more productivity, peace, and potential. If you're fed up with the conventional echo chamber to personal development and human potential, and if you want to be part of the new breeders of leaders and entrepreneurs, come and explore the Four Psychology approach, enabling sustainable, wide-ranging transformation in every aspect of life and work, for exponential, not just marginal gains. Welcome to the Quality of Mind Transforming Business podcast series. And today's episode, I've got another lovely conversation lined up, this time with a fellow coach from across the pond, Bill Giuruzzi. And we're going to have a conversation broadly around the modern day version of how we heal and resilience. And we're going to look to explore that and maybe even reinvent what's possible from resilience and healing. So first of all, let's just let Bill introduce himself because he's brand new to the show. So Bill, welcome.
Well, thank you so much for having me. So just to introduce myself a little bit, my name is Bill Giuruzzi. I'm from upstate New York in the States. And I have sort of a weird background. I got interested in this work smack dab in the middle of studying law here. I was studying to be a lawyer. And I sort of discovered this field of coaching back at a time when you probably know, Piers, but coaching wasn't a thing.
Yes.
It was like sports coaching. And so I was smitten. I was totally taken, and I kept the practice as a lawyer for a number of years, but all the while trying to figure out how I was going to get over into this field. And I just sort of plopped around, did a lot of different trainings, did coaches training. I actually had an insight in the early 2000s and ended up writing my own book called The Life Worth Living. And I guess you'd call me a seeker, and eventually was able to move officially into the training field. I now work as a training director for a New York State government agency here in the States. Primarily my focus on my job right now is leadership coaching. I meet with one person a week for 3 days, scheduled out through next year. So it just sort of blows my mind and it's been quite a long journey, and I'm just happy to be here.
It's brilliant. I didn't know you were a lawyer because I actually studied law as well. But in 1996, I decided that wasn't for me. So
Right.
I quickly moved across. So it's not as fun as coaching, is it? So listeners, here we have a wealth of experience in seeking and someone who's doing the day job of leadership coaching, which is absolutely valuable. And I met Bill fairly recently, probably 6 months ago. We were doing a program together. And we kind of got on, and I thought, what a great person to have on the podcast. And there are many things we could talk about, Bill, but what we wanted to get into today, which hopefully be relevant for listeners, is this idea of in modern society, how people regard what their well-being and potential is, and how people can sometimes just sort of seek the absence of bad feelings, or they try to get rid of symptoms, and they see that as, oh, I'm good now because the symptoms that were happening, my stress or my burnout or whatever, has gone and I'm good now. Now, what we want to point to is there's something more fundamental to our well-being and potential that's available. And also how, as a society, we've got into, the way I sometimes describe it is we like being comfortable, and pain or uncomfortable feelings are to be avoided. And really, that actually is completely contrary to what the human system is designed to do and where true growth and development comes from. So I thought that would be the themes for today, but we can go anywhere that emerges from that. How does that sound?
That sounds that sounds great. I mean, I think you're right on, and I know, I'm 55, going to be 56 years old this year, and I know for the better part of 50 years of my life, the name of the game for me was try to stay in the good feelings and avoid the bad feelings.
Right.
And then I went through some medical challenges, had a brain bleed and some debilitating anxiety, and it there was no avoiding it. There wasn't anything I could do to get out of it. And believe me, I tried. I tried everything I could think of to not have to feel the feelings. And what ultimately had me heal was just what you're pointing to, is when I started to just allow them. Like I didn't fight with them anymore. I sort of resolved for myself, rather than I'd spent about the better part of a year trying to get rid of anxiety so that I could live. And then I started taking on learning to live with the anxiety.
Mm.
And at the time I did that, which was now about 3 years ago, I didn't know it was ever going to go away. I thought, this is it. I'm going to just live with this for the rest of my life. And in fact, I honestly don't know if there's a sort of a causal relationship between the two things, but I'm basically anxiety free. And it just sort
Yeah.
of blows my mind.
So let's just track that back. So to start with, there was anxiety there. I got to do everything I can to avoid it. That was kind of
Yeah.
stage one, if you like, if there was such a thing as a stage. Then you
Yeah.
were like, okay, there's anxiety. I'm going to learn to be with the anxiety.
Yeah.
I'm going to be okay with it. I'm going to tell myself to be okay with it. I'm going to manage my anxiety. So rather than try and avoid it, I'm going to be okay with it. And then there was this sort of further emergence where and this is where I want to get into, that almost the magical bit people might be thinking is you went beyond just managing it and being okay with it to it kind of dissolving and now it being a pretty much a non-issue. Is that
Yeah.
right?
That's right. And in there was a moment of where I woke up in the morning and my anxiety was as ever present. Like I felt awful. Um, and for some reason, well, I know the reason, but I don't, there wasn't a causal thing to it. It just, uh, my mind went completely quiet
Mm,
and the anxiety completely disappeared for like 5 seconds. And so right then and there, I knew the jig was up. Like
mm.
I knew it wasn't what I thought it was anymore. You know, when it came back the next morning, it still felt as real, but I just didn't believe it in the same way.
So
And
something shifted, what I would call a realization. There was some realization, precognitive or non-cognitive realization that something was different about it.
that's right. And
Yeah.
so I just sort of weaved my way back into health. I kept looking for well-being where it
Yes.
was in the anxiety. And so I started looking for it where it actually was, which was behind the anxiety and
Right.
not believing the thoughts. And then I think that the sort of the magical part you're talking to was, at least from my perspective, I mean, again, I don't know, the sort of the dissolving of it was, I think, my brain and my body had been conditioned. So it took a while for that. If it had been conditioned to have this experience, I don't think we understand that sometimes it if you keep hitting the first like lever, uh I kept like diving into the anxiety, trying to figure it out, trying to figure it out, trying to figure it out. And it was revving up my body and doing chemicals through my body. And I'd have, this cortisol and all that. And so my body sort of got trained in that. And I think over the next year, there was still like a period where my body was just settling and the anxiety was dissolving.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and that's quite common in I think that people, even though something has shifted, almost the coping strategies or the muscle memory, for want of a better word, is still there. So we have a psychological alertness to the anxiety still. So the body gets revved up, not actually by the anxiety, that's kind of gone. It's to our fear of it, you know.
that's right.
And then that can take a little while to quieten down sometimes. And it's worth just saying to people listening now, we're talking specifically about anxiety now, but this what we're going to be talking to is about, could be about anything. So
Yes,
if we've got business leaders, entrepreneurs, or people who are just thinking, well, I find a lot of stress, or I get very angry or frustrated, or fear, or loneliness, or whatever it is, this is not just an anxiety thing now. This is to do with
that's right.
anything. So let's just get into the bit and see if we can point to what was the shift, do we think, knowing what you and I know, and I know you're a big advocate of the sort of way I point with before, psychology and quality of mind, and a lot of listeners are, but some aren't, is what is the bit that enabled you to go not from the kind of let's avoid the anxiety to let me manage anxiety, but from almost the second bit to the third bit. Well, what was it that enabled that to happen? How would you describe that? Not the process, but what do you think is going on in the psychology or the nature of what we are that enables a shift like that for the anxiety just to change in that way?
Um, if I got what the second and third bit are in that question,
Yeah.
I think that I just got really interested. Well, there's two things. One is up until the shift, I didn't want to be here anymore. But I really
Mm,
got clear I wanted to live. So that was
mm,
one thing. So living was more important to me than my feelings
mm,
and whatever that meant. The other thing was I got really curious as to what it was, like what this feeling that I was so afraid of was and
mm,
how much of it could I take. So even to this day, if I get a little bit of anxiety, my first response still is to brace, to like,
mm.
but what I learned was, and what I was learning during that year was, don't brace, open
Yeah.
to it.
Right.
And I got really curious about it. And I started looking at what was actually happening in my body that I was so afraid of. So I started trying to look at the physical sensations happening in my body and the thoughts happening in my body and the feelings happening in my body without any kind of narrative to it, just looking to see what it was.
Yeah.
And I got to the point, Piers, where I was actually goading it. Like, is that all you got? Bring it on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think, do you know what? It's so interesting because, and let me just run this past you. So I always try to simplify things possibly too far, but the way I look at it is, see if this fits with your experience, is that any time we're in suffering or lack of resourcefulness is because in that moment there's a resistance to the what I call the isness, the what is, what's turning up in thought, perception, sensation. And the only way we can resist the isness is through a self-identification. Now, what it sounds like was happening for you in that is your resistance, the idea that there was a Bill resisting the idea of feeling this changed or shifted. And no longer were you kind of trying to manage it or brace yourself the separate Bill from it. It was like, I'm going to just bring this in. You can lean in, what I would call lean into it. And even to the extent, as you said there, come on, let's feel the aliveness of this. Let's be alive to this sensation rather than I need to try and avoid this and that kind of stuff. And I can be with it, but it's not what I want. You were just like, being alive is feeling.
Yeah,
And that dropped the resistance to the isness. And my guess is the reason you're able to do that is because at some level, the self identification, and this is the non dual part of this, that the self identification dropped. So there is a Bill experiencing sensation, but that's not what you are.
that's right. Yeah, actually, I think you put it in words I've been trying to capture, at least what I heard you say, Piers, is I know it sounds hokey, but I started feeling bigger than the
Mm.
anxiety.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It was like my focus was very myopic on the anxiety. And then it was like this experience just happening inside, but this much bigger space.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Some people listening to us might go, "Yeah, that makes total sense. You were no longer the separate Bill. You saw that you were the expansive field." Some people will be listening to that going, "That does sound hooky, and that does sound woo-woo. What are you on about?" But to try and put it in a context of people, if you think about a time when people are in what is known as flow state, maybe when you're doing some sport, or you're just singing or dancing or laughing with friends, or just out having a lovely walk in nature, or when you fall in love, or something like that. These everyday experiences, people will get a sense of feeling more than just themselves, right? That they're more expansive. There's just almost like the world's coming through the space that they are. That's what flow state is, I guess. And it's no longer self-identified as a separate me, where the world's happening to us, to a separate me.
Yeah.
As you say, you feel more expansive, and there's a Bill there, but it's not the epicenter. It's not an
Yeah,
entity. It's an
that's right.
appearance.
That's right. It's like you were talking earlier about it's not just about anxiety. I mean, with the people I work with, they come to me and they say things like, I want to lead, but I'm insecure. I want to lead, but I'm shy. I want to lead,
Mm,
but something. And I go, no, you have to learn to lead shy.
mm,
Like just let it be there. It's not a problem.
yeah. Because
It's
as
just
soon,
like,
and that's the irony, isn't it? As soon as we stop resisting it, guess what? The shy idea of me, which is our story and identity that we create, usually looks like we've done it from feedback, or someone said, "Oh, you're a bit shy when you lead," or something like that. So we believe the narrative. But the irony, paradox, is that as soon as we no longer resist the idea of being a shy leader, guess what? The shyness sort of slightly falls away,
that's right.
and new things appear. And I think if we segue now into what we were saying at the beginning around healing or resilience. So resilience would be the workplace word, healing would be the non-workplace word. It's
Yeah.
kind of the same thing, just different language that feels more appropriate. If we are thinking we're a separate us that needs to do healing or be healed or manage healing or resilience, then bizarre as it may sound, we're already starting from the wrong place.
Yes.
What would you say
Yeah.
about that? What would you say about that?
Well, I think, yeah, because we're going from, when I say to somebody, you have to learn to lead shy, what I'm really saying is shyness is not a problem to be solved.
Mm,
Like and that's also was part of the insight I had with my own anxiety was at the time I was learning about mental well-being and all those different things. And I said to myself, well, if all this is true, that there's a system that's designed to take care of all this stuff happening to me, what do I need to do about it?
mm,
Nothing. And so I just started living life. And living life to me meant like solving the actual leadership problems or solving, creating or coaching someone or being in life. And I started understanding that and letting the sort of the system do. And so yes, it took it off the map. And then I started noticing, wow, every time it goes, like it actually really does go. It moves on. And yeah, it comes back, but it always moves. And so I started identifying well-being as being more just movement.
mm,
It's just a movement of life, rather than I think we think of it as well, we'll never have that thought again. We'll never have that feeling again.
mm.
No, you don't live your life trying to never cut your finger, right? Because you don't go, well, not cutting my finger means I have well-being. No, the well-being is that if you cut your finger, it's going to heal.
Exactly. And the best place to look, and I use these examples all the time in my work, is little kids. So little kids do not avoid having a tantrum.
That's right.
They don't think, oh, I should never cry. I should never throw my toys out the pram, literally or metaphorically. Because it seems to me, for a little 2 year old, they they don't care whether they're laughing, crying, stomping around, or cheering. They don't really care because they're just in the fluid movement of aliveness to feeling. And it's only us that kind of thinks we should feel X or we should feel Y. But also, isn't it fascinating? How come we will pay money to go on a roller coaster?
I know, right?
Pay money to watch a horror movie at the movie theater, or skydive, or so we love feeling.
Absolutely. We want to feel it all. And I always say that to my clients is the only difference between an adult and a child is not that we feel feelings as an adult. It's that a child hasn't been taught yet that it's a problem.
Yeah, exactly. So this modern version of feeling or well-being, as you put it, is the absence of kind of anything negative. But that's, I mean, it's just, well, it's inaccurate way of living life because you're never going to do that, and it's just boring, and it's like it's trying to avoid the aliveness of what we are because we are perfectly equipped to feel. We're feeling proof. We're thought proof. We're feeling proof. We're waterproof, which is, the skin can manage the rain and the system can you. I often say it's impossible to feel a feeling you weren't designed to feel,
Exactly. That's brilliant. Yep.
right? Because the system couldn't have it otherwise.
That's
So,
right.
but the problem is when we create a relation like you're the leader that might feel insecure, as you say, for some reason, when that insecure sensation that they've labeled insecurity becomes a problem, that's what gets in the way of potential, not the sensation.
That's right. And the thing too is when it comes to things like leadership or performance in general, most of our models are looking from a third person perspective. So we look at a Gandhi or a Martin Luther King Jr. or an Abraham Lincoln, and we look from the outside and we go, what are the qualities and characteristics that they had? And then we try to be that. But from their first person perspective, they were just trying to solve problems and we don't know what experience they were having inside. They could have been insecure and they could have been shy and they could have been all of it and joyful and all of it's just moving through them. But we sort of look from the outside, from our perspective, and try to label their experience. And I just don't think it gives us a great model for resilience.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right in that especially that kind of, and it turns up in different bits of society, the alpha male bit, or whatever it is. But it's also kind of maybe interesting that, and I don't think I was ever big into this, but I was definitely more than I am now. But thinking, well, will this movement we're talking about, will this movement head the right direction? So, because what the way you described well-being was it was a movement, a dynamic flow of sensation, feeling, and perception. And I suppose what the me does, the separate me does sometimes, is it can be concerned that there won't be movement,
Yeah,
and or there'll be movement going the wrong way, like sort of, oh my God, it could get worse, which of course is also fine. But I suppose if we don't, I use the word trust as if there's a separate us that can trust. But if we don't trust the system will move the right way, we then take it off automatic and try and put it on manual.
that's right. And I think mostly because of what we've been taught, there is a level at which, and I tell this, had to do this for myself, is I love to do like 30-day experiments where I have this idea like of
Mm,
trusting that it'll go and actually really looking at like, does it actually move? But I also challenge people when they tell me that it doesn't go, as I say, well, have you ever been stuck in a mood in perpetuity?
mm,
Like
yeah.
just look at the data of your life. You've never been stuck in anything in
And
perpetuity.
it's also interesting, isn't it? So we would use these labels, anxiety, insecurity, fear, frustration, whatever, as a set of feelings, but it's impossible to have the same feeling twice, precisely the same feeling. We would call that, oh, that's my feeling of insecurity, of frustration, of shyness, insecurity. But they're not actually the same feelings because feelings are dynamic. It's like a flame in a fire. It might look the same, it's yellow and flickery or orange and flickery, but no, it's a fresh combustion of consciousness in that moment. So the idea that there's no movement in feeling is only because the conceptual mind generalizes it and calls it, oh, there's my anxiety. But
That's
if
right.
it's not really a thing, it's
That's
just
right.
a label.
That's right.
Um,
I love that, Piers, because it all lives in the narrative that we put on it, right? So we connect the data points. We had this anxious feeling here at point A. We had an anxious feeling at point B. We had an anxious feeling at point C. We connect all those in our mind and we come with, that's my anxiety,
yes.
right? And what we miss is, well, what was happening between point A and point B?
Well, also, you think about this. Little kids statistically are very medically resilient. They bounce out really fast. So they get ill and they heal fast. And we
Yeah,
might think that's to do with youth. I don't think it's really to do with youth. I think that's to do with the fact they can never conceptualize being ill. So we would say something like, last week I had the flu. It started on Tuesday and it ended on the Sunday. We would go, there's a time when I was ill or below par, and we would kind of give it a label of that illness, and then there's 1,000 illnesses we can have. The same we would do with our anxiety or our insecurity. And actually, if you don't conceptualize it, all there is just symptoms. So the flu, there might be nausea and sweating. That there's not an illness. There's not a person who's ill. There's just a body mind that's having symptoms. So babies don't go, "Oh, I was ill last week. I had colic." They'd be coughing or whatever they do with colic. They probably burp or something. There's symptoms, yes. So we're not saying they don't get ill, but they don't have the concept of illness. And because they don't self-identify with them being ill, guess what? It moves faster. So then I got a question now about your 30-day experiment, because my guess is, but I'd love to know what you're going to say to this, is you use the word trust, right? Now that's an interesting word. So, because I would guess that if you trusted in a hoping way,
Yeah.
then the self mind's still attached to it'd be better if I didn't have this than I did, right? And that's going to get in the way of the change. Whereas if you had a very, let's call it neutral intention without any self involvement, as in, oh, the bill needs to be better by not having this, then that's going to make a real difference. So the more neutrally we can experience it without hoping or trusting for it to change, the more we lean in and the more the dynamic fluidness of the system happens.
Yeah, I agree
Does
with,
that fit with
yeah.
you?
Yeah, I think it fits with me. When I'm doing these experiments, I'm not looking to make anything happen.
Yeah.
I'm looking to see what's actually there that I might be missing.
Yes.
I'm
And
trying to
that's a
have
very
eyes
different
for,
frame, isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah,
Because if you went into it going, oh, it's going to change, it's going to change, is it going to be day 15 or day 18?
right.
Please, please, please change. Then the self, we're going back to what we said, the fundamentals at the beginning, which is if we resist the isness, then, we're going to clog the system up. So, and it sounds paradoxical, doesn't it? But there needs to be a neutrality of experiencing the feeling,
Yeah,
um, rather than, oh, yeah, I'm going to do this thing they said on the podcast, so I feel better.
that's right. And the beauty of the system that I love, Piers, is even if I do something, or even if somebody does something and that results in clogging up the system, it still will eventually, like, it'll still pass. It'll still, because it's just moving in a direction,
Yeah.
So I tell people all the time, I go, you know, if you like doing rain dances, you can go out and do dances to get rid of the rain. It doesn't get rid of the rain,
Yeah.
but you can go do it. So there's all sorts of things you can do. So in that way, why I like that is because, and why I like telling people that is you really can't get it wrong.
Yeah.
This thing is really built well. There is value in seeing how it actually works and sort of see it in your experience because of the explanations we beginning. That's my anxiety, puts together these data points and it misses what's happening between data points. It's missing between what's happening between the anxiety, it just sort of writes those things off, filters them out. The system is just really well built. So I just like seeing uh, what's there, what is, as you put it.
Yes. And that's a really good distinction. So we can't break the system. It's bulletproof and it can handle anything that occurs in within it, and any thought, feeling, perception that occurs. So therefore we don't have to be afraid of that. But it will always restore back once we stop resisting. But there is some value, it seems to me, in the work I do, and I'm sure the work you do with your clients, is that once we, and it has been from my personal experience too, once we, let's call it, cotton on to how the system actually works rather than what we've been conditioned and convinced to how it works, in that there's a separate me that needs to sort it out. Once we see that that's not the case and it's way more intelligent and we are being lived, it works better. I mean, I'm putting better as a kind of like a preference word, but do you see what I mean? So there is value in understanding the system, because then it seems to have a wider bandwidth regardless to what's going on in it.
Yeah. Yeah. I even like begin to appreciate the part of the system. Like this is very uh, sort of everyday and practical in my mind. You set out to do something, you set out to go somewhere, and then you realize, oh my God, I'm going in the wrong direction.
Mm,
For me, that's part of the system.
mm,
That's the system helping you correct.
mm.
Yeah,
And
like, and what we get, what people beat themselves up. Oh my God, I'm so stupid. I went the wrong way. I shouldn't have done this way. And it's like, well, maybe that's true, but you did. And isn't it a good thing that you have something in you that says, wait a minute, hold on, that's the wrong way.
well, it's exactly the same as well. We'd have nausea or sweats. What's it
Yeah,
doing? It, from what I can understand of basic biology, that's a good thing to get the toxin out of the system, because it's better to have it out than in the body mind, that is. So we wouldn't, just like when a tree loses its leaves and they fall to the forest floor and then they become fungi eventually or something else, right? That's just how it works. So when kids change their teeth, one tooth gets pushed out and new one comes through. That's just what it does. And we're kind of fine with that to one level, aren't we? Right? We're kind of fine. Oh yeah, it's okay if I'm ill, I might have nausea, get the thing out of my stomach. But here's the interesting thing for me, particularly in the world of work. When we are experiencing work as difficult, hard, stressful, frustrating, a grind, we don't think that's the system trying to tell us something. We think
Mm,
that's the world.
right. And what do you, what, from your perspective, what is the system, what is it telling us?
Well, I think if the world is looking, let's call it hard, difficult, stressful, frustrating, is relentless, that's the feeling state that we're in is giving us a clue to the level of self-identification and resistance that's going on.
Yeah,
And it's sort of saying, hey, do you know there's some more freshness here that you're not seeing? And it keeps showing us back in life through the world being the mirror. It keeps showing us these challenges, and they'll be thematic, as in you'll see patterns of them in relationships or in your wants, and you'll keep seeing them. And we don't think, oh, that's the system learning or trying to show us something, like the equivalent of having nausea or sweats. We think, oh no, that's this world doing it to us
that's
because
right.
we're in perceived duality. Now, actually, what it's showing us is, hey, guess what? There's something to see here about what's being self-identified with, and the feelings are inviting us to feel more, to get the fluidity back. But going back to what we said at the beginning, we think having well-being is having an absence of negative feeling. No, it's actually the negative feeling is saying, come on over here, experience this in the new way, like the original way, the way you did when you were a baby, like an infant, and then there's going to be something fresh on the other side.
Right.
But we see, oh my gosh, that's a difficult feeling. We then go, that must be life doing it to us,
Yes.
the boss, the difficult economy, the marketplace, my background, my psychology, and therefore I need to avoid that.
Yeah.
And I'll go to comfort, and I'll go to comfort. Nowadays in the modern world, it's quite easy to go to numb ourselves in comfort
Yeah.
through either substances, habits like shopping or addictions, or even just smartphones and stuff like that, or
Yeah.
food or eating, you know. So it's quite easy to get comfortable.
It is easy to get comfortable, and it's, but I think it's, it's what you're pointing to. It's not just that the world's not doing it to us, it's that we relate to it as it's my
Yeah.
anxiety, it's my stress, it's my overwhelm, it's mine. And rather than, number one, when you sort of just look at it as a feeling, like I just look at it as it's a learning curve,
Yeah.
like what you're
And
saying.
everything is.
Yeah, it's just pointing you, it's just saying that you've, you've, just like a baby when they're learning to walk, they struggle.
Yeah.
And we don't expect them not to struggle.
Well, see, and we've even put that word struggle,
Right.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
quite possibly it's the best thing ever to learn to walk like that because the system needs to learn where to bounce off the table and where to hit its head. And so it's not struggle, it's perfect.
Yes, that's a better way of saying
We
it.
go, oh, he didn't do it first time. What's wrong with that little kid? Right?
Right. Right. Yeah, we don't go to our little kids, hey, get up, you lazy,
Yeah.
lazy little one.
You know, you've had two goes at toddling now and it's not working. No,
Right.
it's perfect.
Right.
Right? So who knows whether that's true or not, but it just occurs to me that we would put struggle on and one
Yeah.
kid takes longer than the other, so we think it's less good. So, and I suppose, and I'm just going to chuck two words out there, which again might be helpful and might not, but we seem to have, I've got confused between comfort and freedom.
Yeah.
What would you make of that? Now, I've just two very big, broad words, but let's try and get behind that for people. What's your take on our preference for comfort over what true freedom is?
Yeah. Well, for me, uh, comfort usually has led to like a backing away from life, a protected, like it's a protective, so I can feel more comfortable. It's like I call it like a lowering of the bar of
Mm,
what may be possible in terms of sort of playing in life. And so it's like I would sort of chase myself back to, feel good now. I'm okay. I'm all right. I think normally we think of
mm,
freedom as freedom from something. Freedom from bad experiences. I think it's to have the freedom with them, to have the freedom
Mm,
to act in life, live life, participate in life with whatever's showing up. That
yeah,
for me is real freedom.
yeah.
And to discover that, and I really think it's a matter of like looking at your life, your at least in your memory of and seeing that even in your worst times in life when you felt the worst, living was still going on. It
Yeah.
was still happening. But
Mm,
most of us, when we talk about, at least I know I do, when I've talked about the hard parts in my life, it's all about the feeling. Like when I was in law school, I went through a devastating breakup, and that's how it lives for me is like, oh my God, that was so hard. But there was still a body going to class, studying, passing 2 bar exams. So life living was still going on. And I think we have a tendency to sort of overlook that because, again, I think we've just put feelings on a pedestal.
mm. I think that's really well said. And because we then try so hard to go towards them or away from them, like there's some we really want to have more of, and some we want to avoid. It's thinking. I think we think that the way to get to true freedom is via freedom of feeling, and so we try to get to freedom via comfort. So if I look at those two words, we think, oh, the best way to feel free is to feel comfortable all the time. So if I want to be free in life, I want to be financially secure, never have to worry about the bills, never have this going on with this person here or this thing going on here. So that's what true freedom is just comfort all the time. And it's so backwards because all that happens, as you say, is you contract back into a, I think Michael Neal says it, living life on a postage stamp. So you can be comfortable, but you can't really do anything, right? or we try and get okay with feeling that we don't really feel it, and and that kind of stuff. We distract ourselves from it as soon as it comes. Whereas actually, ultimate freedom is almost like the 2-year-old not having one bit of identification to the type of feeling that's going on. That's true freedom. There might be some that you feelings that you describe as comfortable, but there might not. So
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Then anything's available. So I can't remember who said the quote, but someone said, "Comfort's quietly killing us,"
Yeah.
right?
I don't know
And
who's it.
I see that. I see that because what happens is that you take going back to what I was saying at the beginning about the workplace. So there's this kind of slight coping crisis going on. A lot of people in the workplace, I don't know whether you find this with the people you do your leadership coaching on, but they're kind of in a chronic coping mode. So they can do it, but Sunday night they start thinking about Monday, and by Thursday they're really hoping it would be the Friday, and then there's not a lot of joy, there's not a lot of liberation. They're just kind of they just think life is quite hard, and you just got to do these things to pay the bills, and you kind of put up with people because they're like this, and they kind of believe that to such an extent that they think that's just what life feels like.
That's right.
And what we're saying is the more that people believe that, the more they'll see that to start with. So it will become self-evident. Oh yeah, that's the mirror of the world. And it will feel difficult. So then you think, well, actually it's difficult, so I've got to dig deep. Now what we're saying is flip that round, go towards that discomfort, see through what it really is, and then the very same things of that workplace will just look and start to look and feel different.
That's right. Because if you don't go at it, into it, you never really there's no other way to discover what's on the other side of it.
Of course. Yeah. And what's at the heart of it, so if people listening now have got a bit lost, let's just try and distill it back. So
Sure.
what's at the heart of that issue is what I call the case of mistaken identity, is that we think there's a separate me that is experiencing the world of work or the world of colleagues or the world of finances or economies or politics or whatever it is. And that me needs to try and be smart, clever, good, strong to deal with it as it's happening to me.
Yeah.
And then when it feels difficult, the me thinks, well, I don't like feeling like this, but I've got to do the best I can. and I try and avoid those feelings if I can, or I try and do that to make that happen, or I try and give an antidote to that feeling by doing that, or I try to distract myself from that, or I try and heal temporarily by doing this. And if the symptom goes away for a bit, then great, I've done a good job. But if we recognize at the heart of all of this, there's no separate me
Right.
that needs protecting or striving. There's that just opens up in such a different way. Now that might sound a big leap for people, but it isn't. From my work now in the last few years, it's available for all of us. It's not only available for some people. So does that make sense when I'm sort of linking this case of mistaken identity to this chronic coping and struggling that we're doing?
Yeah, I think it's right on. What I hear and what you're saying is, um, it's like if there's a me trying to protect you from a feeling, who created the feeling? Like that's still arising in the space that you are. Like that didn't come from, like, you're having a feeling of discomfort. That's not coming from somewhere else. I'm not even talking about the circumstances. I'm saying that's part of who you are. So in thinking that I got to get rid of it, or it's coming from something else, or something I have to run from, that's what creates the separation. That's what creates there's this other me that needs to get away from it.
Right. I mean,
And it's like you're trying to get away from it, but it keeps following you.
let's just go forensic on that for a mo, because and direct inquiry is the best way to see this. If people know what that means. If not, you can find out. But in the moment, if you're teaching an alien how to do this, so the alien's been learning how to be us, it's just been dropped into our body mind. What happens is there's a sensation occurs, right? And then a me occurs that had the sensation, and then the me calls the sensation anxiety or struggle or
Yeah.
fatigue or burnout or shyness or whatever it is. Now, if you really looked at that directly without any sort of pre-learning, you would see that the very space that the feeling turns up in, also the me turns up. It's not like the me has the feeling. They're
That's
both
right.
they're both characters on the screen. So if we make it like a TV metaphor, they're both characters in the Netflix, right? They both just turn up on the screen. But we make it like one of the characters on the screen is kind of having the other character as a feeling almost, right? It's not. They're both turning up in the same place. They're both objects in our psychology. They're both thoughts, perceptions, and sensations. One is a me one. There's a me Bill, there's a me Piers. And then it thinks it has the feeling. Now, this is easier, I sometimes think, to think with a thought. So we can have a thought like, oh, I'm going to have dinner soon. And what should I have for dinner? Or I might have some broccoli for dinner. Now, then I might have another thought saying, oh, what do I need to have for breakfast tomorrow? Because I'm going for a big cycle ride. Now, we would know that the broccoli thought can't have the breakfast thought. We know one thought can't have another thought. A thought can't have a thought.
Right.
But for some reason, we think me can have a thought.
Yeah.
But me is just a thought.
That's right.
How can a thought have a thought?
That's right.
A thought can't have a thought. That they're both equals
Yeah.
in the psychological turning upness. But we have to see that it's impossible for me to have a feeling or a thought, a separate me. So of course I can't control them, manage them. Once I see that at a realized level, it kind of changes. Now, does that sound ridiculously complicated? Or is it something people can explore, inquire into?
I don't think it sounds complicated, and it's all what I like about it is it's all contextual. So in other words, there's places where the me arises, and plenty of things that you do where the me
Mm,
doesn't arise,
mm,
right? So the me arises is context up against some other feeling that we've had to protect ourselves from it. Um, And so it's all contextual. So you're at work and you're feeling bored, and oh, I got to do something about the boredom. Okay, but on the flip side, my guess is you've never asked someone, hey, could you get that glass of water for me on the table, but be inspired while you do it? Because there, we don't make the connection that it's not even that a me arises. It's like
Yeah.
Just can you do that for me? There's nothing added. Then you'll just see body grabbing glass and bringing it. That's all you'll
Yeah.
see. And there's no extra problem added to doing that act. And so, but nobody that I know anyway, would argue that inspiration, like I love inspiration. I love being inspired. I think it's a wonderful feeling. But if if you if you tell someone to get a glass on a table but be inspired while they do it, you've made their life harder because now they have to go
Yes.
into the separate me and try to do something with their internal state to get themselves into a state so they can go get the glass.
Yeah, and that's a pretty tall order. And if you're lucky, it might feel inspiring. If not, it won't. What I mean is that's not something you can do. You can't order up inspiration. It
Right.
either rocks up or it doesn't. I mean, you could be an actor and show signs of what an inspired person looks like, right, to try and portray inspiration. Um, but it's not. There's in that action there, right, of just getting the water. We don't normally put a me in there,
That's right.
right? So
Exactly.
in the last minute, you were moving your hands around while talking to me, and I'm doing it now, and I don't have a me thought doing that.
Right.
It's just I probably scratched my nose a couple of times in the last half hour. You've probably sighed or done whatever. There's no me in that. So
That's
we
right.
only add the me in some contexts, as you're saying.
Yeah.
So the inquiry for people is to start to look at that and go, oh yeah, that me's not always there.
It's not.
It only turns up when there's trouble, usually.
That's
It's
right.
one thing you can
I
spot.
actually challenge people to say it's mostly not there.
Yeah, yeah. So people are listening to this. If they haven't turned it off now and thought it's a load of old waffle, they've managed to get this far. Um, how can we put a bow on this? What people might go, okay, I sort of resonate with what you're saying. So what? So what? How can I go into the world now and just kind of play with this a little bit? What would you recommend people can start to just get curious about in a new or different way to start to see a little bit more of this for themselves?
Um, Honestly, for me, it's go play the game of life.
Mm-hmm.
Go participate in life and watch as these things arise where then a me arises and you think you need to do something about it and then what there is to do. We've learned to sort of take these detours and go, let me go work on my shyness. There's nothing to work on. It's energy.
Mm.
And just go play the game of life and go whatever that means. In the moment, could mean getting a glass off the table. It could mean watching TV. It could be working on some big project at work. Whatever it is, you're not going to get rid of the feelings. What we've learned is we made those feelings relevant. We made
Mm.
that experience relevant. We've made it mean something other than maybe what it actually means. And maybe it means nothing.
Right. So what I'm hearing you say there is go into life, do your thing, and then just have a little noticing, a little neutral noticing of when it looks like there's a me that's getting involved in how it needs to feel or be.
That's right.
Just don't give that so much weight and attention.
Yeah.
Right. Just like the 2-year-old would, right?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
don't,
That's all learned.
yeah.
That's how our world got put together.
So, and I think I'm going to ditto to that, echo that in what you said, but I'm going to also add another little idea that people can try, which is that when some of those sensations turn up that the me might label as not wanted, or even actually, it doesn't even have to be a cognitive not wanted, but there's a sort of backing away by the system, whether that's cognitively turning up or not, whether you get the thought saying, oh, I don't like that, or whether you just feel the contraction, is to go the other way.
Yeah.
It's actually to go, I'm going to feel that. I'm going to allow that sensation in, and that you realize that, and the best way I get clients to play with this is playing in the cold shower. So you're in the shower, you turn the water to cold, and to start with, there's going to be a me that goes, "Stop that! I don't want that. That's horrible. It's horrible. It's horrible." Um, but actually, if we just feel just sensation. It's a different sensation to the one before when the tap was on hot, right? Different sensation, but there's nothing good or bad about it. You just had the sensation. It actually, after 20 seconds, becomes perfectly okay, if
Yeah.
not alive, right? It's even better than the hot shower. So if we could do that with a feeling that we currently are trying to eradicate so we can get to our well-being. To go back to the beginning, we think well-being is eradication of feeling. And lean into the sensation. Ignore the narrative about what you think's caused it, or don't, because that's just the mind making up stuff. And just allow the sensation to be in the system. Just felt.
Yeah.
That gets the system
Yeah.
back into fluidity.
It reminds me of when I was working with a coach when I was going through the anxiety. She gave me this assignment once, and she said, Bill, I want you to experience what's happening in your body without the narrative.
Yeah.
And at first I didn't know what she meant, really,
Yeah.
until I saw for myself that the word anxiety was part of the narrative.
Right. Yeah, that's a good spot. And I think what I would say to make it easier for people, because some people would hear it without the narrative as I must have a quiet mind, right? No, I'm not suggesting that's available, having a
Right.
quiet mind while feeling this stuff. I'm saying have the narrative, but do not give it any weight. Again,
Yeah.
that may sound the same, but I'm saying there's going to
I
be
get you.
thoughts turning up, but
Yeah,
you just
that's
don't
fair.
give them anything.
That's right.
And
That's right.
anxiety itself, oh, here comes that anxiety. We've already labeled it.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas a 2-year-old doesn't go, here comes anxiety.
Right.
A 2-year-old just has sensation.
Yeah. I remember once, Piers, I was about 6 months after really starting to heal, and the thought that came into my mind was, I'm gonna go lay down and enjoy it.
Bring it in.
Yeah, let's just bring it in. And I did.
Yeah.
And by enjoying, and what it meant to me was exactly what we're pointing to is all the thoughts were there, all that stuff was there, but I just felt what was actually happening in my body,
Yeah.
the sensations that were actually there.
I think being totally indifferent to the feeling, whether the sensation, so whether you enjoy it or don't enjoy it or hate it or want it, it's almost a neutrality. It's a rawness. It's just sensation. I mean, all emotion is feeling, or feeling is sensation with a label. All sensation is just vibration, or vibration is just aliveness. If you come back to it, it's just aliveness.
That's right.
And it's funny, isn't it? People will go to the gym and they'll push weights and they'll know a sensation will happen that could feel uncomfortable, like the fatigue of the lactate or whatever. And they're like, that's good. That's good for you,
Yeah.
right? Isn't it good that my muscles hurt? I've come out the gym session. Oh, I'm feeling so tight. My muscles are tight. My lactate's built up. I was sore the next morning. We would go, brilliant. The personal trainer would give you a thumbs up. Well done. That's the muscle growing and healing. Whereas we don't have the same view with some of our other feelings.
That's right.
These ones that are more psychological, the anxiety, the insecurity, that kind of stuff. So I think if we can just point people at the end of this, and there's loads more other episodes all about this, and for people to explore on this, particularly with the direct inquiry, but it's to just have a shift the relationship to feeling, and when it feels uncomfortable, go towards it, but go towards it knowing it's not happening to you, it's just an appearance in the system that you also appear in.
Yep.
So, Bill, finally, time's flown. We could carry on this conversation forever. Any parting thoughts or sentiments or summaries you want to add to put a little gift wrap on the end of this?
I would just say, don't worry so much about whether you're denying your bad experiences. Just start to think about that you may be dismissing or denying your well-being.
Yeah.
Just start to look for it. It's right there. It's right there.
That's a nice way to finish, actually. Absolutely right. It is there. So, but it may hide behind a bad feeling, so we don't find it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Neat. Bill, what's the best way if people are interested in contacting you? What's the best way to get hold of you?
They can email me at Giuruzzi. It's WGIRUZZI @hotmail.com.
I'll put that in the show notes. And you have got a book which is out on Amazon. You probably think that book is probably not up to your current understanding, I would
It's
say.
not. It's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, exactly.
There's some good stuff in there, but it's not.
Yeah. Okay. So that's Bill 10 years ago or whatever it is. There's probably going to be
15, man.
a new
Yeah.
version of Bill coming out at some point. Who knows? We'll watch this space. But Bill, it's been a real pleasure to have this conversation. I really enjoyed the exploration, and I'll put your details in the show notes.
Thanks, Piers.
Thank you. So, listeners, as usual, have fun being curious and catch you next time.
If you enjoyed listening to this podcast and want to know more, check out our website at qualityofmind.biz. And also, feel free to reach out and leave us a review or a comment. Until next time, have fun being curious.